Hello, Dinara.
Hi, James.
And welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at the next set of tenses, I think it was. So I believe last time we did past simple, if I remember correctly, wasn't it?
Yes.
So we had a look at past simple. Yeah, it's a tricky tense, but the most important thing with that tense, just remember, is think of it as completed actions. Okay, so completed actions in the past. So today we're looking at the past continuous. Okay, now the past continuous, it sounds scary, but basically you can think of this as a background tense for the past. I was singing in the middle of the street when my neighbor threatened to call the police. So, for example, that's how to do it. So it's the I was, or you were, he was, she was, it was doing. Okay, so we're going to have a look at this. Now, in the example situation that we have here, yesterday, Karen and Joe played tennis. They started at 10 o'clock and finished at 11:30. So at 10:30, they were playing tennis. So if you look at this, they were playing. They were in the middle of playing. They had not finished, and this was after they had started. They were in the middle of it. And we use was and were plus the ing form of the verb in the past is the past continuous. So he was playing, she was playing, it was doing, we were working, you were doing, they were playing, etc. So think of it as a background tense. You're describing things that were in progress in the past. And just remember that the continuous tenses, they are also called the progressive tenses. So think about whether something was in progress at a particular time. Then it's the same formula. So if it's in progress now, present continuous. If it's in progress in the past, past continuous. And if it will be in progress in the future, future continuous. Just think of it like that. That's the best way to think of it. So something in progress at a particular point. That's the easiest way to remember it. So in the next examples, I was doing something. It means I was in the middle of doing it at a certain time. So the actional situation started before this time, but had not finished. That's a very common use of the past continuous. So if you imagine, you've got on one side, I started doing, and then, of course, I finished doing. In the middle, I was doing. So just think of that as a sort of mental timeline in your head. I started doing, I finished doing, in the middle, I was doing. So this time last year, I was living in Hong Kong. What were you doing at 10 o'clock last night? I waved to Helen, but she wasn't looking. At the next examples, if we look at I was doing and I did, we'll just compare them. So I was doing means I was in the middle of an action. I did means the action was completed. So we were walking home when I met Dan. So we were in the middle of that when I met him. Kate was watching TV when we arrived because that was what she was doing. She started before, she continued afterwards, but that is what she was doing. But we walked home after the party last night, so all the way and completely. In other words, Kate watched TV a lot when she was ill last year because you're talking about a completed action. And this is the key difference. I was doing, I was in the middle of an action when something else happened a lot of the time. This is, whereas I did, that's a completed action. This is why you can think of this tense as a background tense, and it's why it's often used in stories and narratives, because it describes the background. It describes something that was going on at that time. You can say that something happened in the past simple in the middle of something else, past continuous. Matt phoned while we were having dinner. So remember, we started having dinner before, we kept having dinner afterwards, but he phoned, we were in the middle of having dinner. It was raining when I got up. Obviously, it started before and it continued afterwards, but that's what was happening when I got up. I saw you in the park yesterday. You were sitting on the grass and reading a book. Again, you know, you were already reading that. You started reading it before I got there, and started sitting on the grass before I got there, and you continued afterwards. I hurt my back while I was working in the garden. So that was something that was going on at the time. But we use the past simple to say that one thing happened after another. I was walking along the road when I saw Dan. So I stopped and we talked for a while. So if we compare these two examples, when Karen arrived, we were having dinner. When Karen arrived, we had dinner. So in the first example, we had already started before she arrived. Whereas in the second example, when Karen arrived, we had dinner. So she arrived, then we had dinner. So, you know, you've got a logical set of events.
Sequence,
yeah, exactly. A logical sequence. That's the point. And just remember, just like the present continuous, some verbs like know and want are not normally used in continuous forms because these are stative verbs. Continuous tenses are for verbs of action, not state. So they don't describe a state, they describe an action. You can use them with actions. So just remember that. You can't say we were knowing or we are knowing. You have to say we knew or we know. So we were good friends, we knew each other well, not we were knowing. I was enjoying the party, but Chris wanted to go home. Not Chris was wanting to go home, you know, because that's a state. You either want something or you don't. You either know something or you don't. It's not an action.
English grammar makes sense to me, and it's very logical. There are few, at least much fewer exceptions. And while studying the English grammar, I definitely developed analytical way of thinking, I suppose it's called.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because especially those tasks, those examples where we compare tenses. For example, what's the difference here when we say when Karen arrived, we were having dinner, and when Karen arrived, we had dinner. This is, to me, it's pure logic. It's quite mathematical.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. That's the thing that you've just got to get used to with the English tenses, is just you've got to think about things like, is the action completed? Particularly when you're talking about the past, you need to think about, is the action completed? When did it start and when did it finish? Was it in progress or not in progress? You know, so, or was it completed? If you think about these things, you'll know which tense to use once you get used to these factors. And it does make sense. It just takes some wrapping your head around it. So it just takes a little bit of wrapping your head around it, but you will get used to it. And the nice thing is that when you do get used to it, it gives you a lot of nuance and meaning just in the tense. So that's why, you know, on the face of it, very similar sentences, like when Karen arrived, we were having dinner, and when Karen arrived, we had dinner. Many languages that would be translated the same, or you would need to use some sort of phrase like in the middle of, you know, but just purely through the tense, you can work that out. And it's the same, not just with the past tenses, but also with present tenses, future tenses. It's the same with a number of these.
Okay, so I think you can, guys, practice these tenses by yourself and check your answers in the end of this book. And we are very curious which tense you find most difficult. What helped me when I was studying English grammar? Unfortunately, at school, my teachers, they were not able to make English grammar very clear to me, and I studied it myself through pure practicing the books. And so I did it myself, and at language schools I tried to just practice speaking, because I find boring to study grammar at school. I find it much easier to study myself, because I have my own speed of understanding. Some understand much quicker in a group, some slower, and we invited to our speaking classes online, and so we make these grammar lessons for YouTube and free, because we believe that this way you can study English grammar by yourself and on your own speed. Just please share these videos with everyone who studies English, who, let's say, looks for perfection in English. See you in our next episodes. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.